it's possible for us to compose multiple functions together, just not two functions. So for example, number 6, we're going to look at how we can compose 3 functions together. G of x over here in blue, that's equal to 2x plus 3, with a nice linear function. H of x is equal to 1 to the absolute value of x minus 4. We have an absolute value function. J of x is equal to 1 divided by the square root of x. So we have a rational function with a radical in it. So let's talk about how we would compose something like, let's find G composed with H composed with J of x. And the first thing I always want you to do anytime you have function notation is rewrite that, anytime you have composition notation with these little O's over here is to rewrite that using function notation. So G composed with H composed with J of x is the same thing as saying G of H of J of x. And remember that in composition, it's a little bit of a different operation because we're working from the inside out. So we're going to start at the right and then work our way to the left. So here's what we need to do. We need to substitute this value in J of x. And we know that J of x is equal to 1 divided by the square root of x. So for our initial substitution, we're going to rewrite it like this. G of H of, and I'll keep that in red because that function's in red, 1 divided by the square root of x. Okay, so there's our first step. Now what do we have to do next? Now our next step is we have to figure out what h of 1 divided by the square root of x is. So recall, anytime I have h of anything, that means I'm going to go to my h function, which is over here. And every time I see an x, which we see right here, we're going to substitute in for it 1 divided by the square root of x. So let's rewrite that next step. This is the same thing as saying g of, okay, so h of 1 divided by the square root of x, well, I have an absolute value of 1 divided by the square root of x minus 4. Okay, so we took care of our, let's erase this over here. We took care of our j of x, and we took care of h of x. The last thing that we have to do over here is we have to take care of our, what are you doing? The last thing we have to do over here is we have to take care of our g function. Okay, so what does g tell us to do? Oh my goodness, this is hysterical. G is telling us that every time I see an x in my g function, so let's go back over here to our g function, which is this guy in blue. Every time I see an x in our g function, I'm going to replace that x with the absolute value of 1 divided by the square root of x minus 4. So finishing this off, okay, so we end up with, so here's our g function, 2. So let's start off with that 2. Okay, so x, remember we're going to replace x with what's in here, which is the absolute value of 1 divided by the square root of x minus 4. And then let's finish off our g function plus 3. So this guy over here in blue is our answer.